back at work, and I'll be on Fox Business from 6 to 9 a.m.
And we say good morning, and I'll say Merry Christmas to you, Cheryl Casone.
Hey, stranger.
How are ya?
Lauren Simonetti, Merry Christmas. Leah, good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Of course, I'll see you both later on in the morning. Good morning to all of you at home. I'm Cheryl Casone, and I'm in for Maria Bartiromo today. It is Thursday, December 28th. Your top stories at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Laying the building blocks for 2018, President Trump is geared up for a big infrastructure push after touting the new tax plan while on vacation in Florida yesterday.
I tell you, that tax cut bill is something, the way it's kicking in. Little did we know, one of the big companies, AT&T, Comcast, so many others, Wells Fargo, they're giving thousands of dollars to their employees. The country is really, it's a big, big, beautiful ship that we're turning around, and a lot of good things are happening.
The president's message to Americans on what to expect in the new year. That is ahead. Well, no waiting until the last minute this year. Homeowners in high-tax states are rushing to pay their property taxes before the new federal law goes into place on January 1st. Why the effort still may not pay off for them. Overnight developments, we're going to talk about it. Looking at broader markets right now, futures pointing to a higher opening. It is the second to last day of trading for the U.S. Dow up by 37 in the pre-market. Over in Europe, after a long holiday weekend, markets, they're now back swinging. European markets all to the downside, but just slightly. And then in Asia, overnight markets closing mostly higher. The Kospi up over 1%. The Nikkei, the only market that was in the red. Well, fighting it in court, Roy Moore filing a lawsuit challenging his defeat in the Alabama Senate election. His new claim of voter fraud, that is ahead. And X marks the spot for Tim Cook this year, the Apple CEO cashing in on the tech titan's iPhone rebound, the jaw-dropping amount that he made in 2017. Disneyland goes dark. A power outage forces the happiest place on earth to shut down dozens of rides. Why it took hours to get the lights back on there. And it was also lights out at the box office for Disney. The House of the Mouse taking the top spot for the year again, thanks to hits like The Last Jedi and its Marvel movies. We're going to have a full list for you coming up. All of that and a lot more ahead this morning. And joining me on set today, Fox News contributor and National Review reporter Katherine Timpf is here. The Wall Street Journal's telecom reporter Ryan Knutson is with me, and Chief Research Officer for H2 Research and retail analyst Hitha Herzog. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are we feeling about our taxes this morning?
Great.
That's definitely what I'm thinking about right now. How much time do we have?
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm saying tomorrow by noon, if you really want to get going on the whole, if you really want to make some changes, do it by tomorrow at noon.
Well, I know people that have been lining up to try and get those paid off, including family members of mine. So I know this is certainly top of mind.
Yeah, it is.
If you're not doing it now, there's a good reason to file your taxes as early as you can in January because of the Equifax breach that people with their Social Security numbers out there, people can file your taxes and try to get your returns on your behalf. So it's you should really get out there and try to do that sooner.
At least this year won't be the painful year. It's going to be 2019 when you actually see your accountant and the rubber hits the road.
As for the tax cuts, but.
We've got a lot more coming up this morning. New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is going to be joining us. Martha Stewart, Living Omnimedia founder Martha Stewart's going to be here. You don't want to miss both of those amazing guests coming up during the show. But first, well, our top story this hour, the president's first major legislative push in the new year is going to be infrastructure. The White House expected to unveil a proposal aimed at repairing the nation's roads, airports, and bridges next month. Earlier this year, the administration proposed spending $200 billion on infrastructure over the next decade that they say will spur an additional $800 billion on the state and the local level. That adds up to $1 trillion if you're keeping track right now. Now, this comes as a major New York City area thoroughfare, the New York Bay Extension Bridge, is now closed for emergency repairs after the deck dropped several inches. Joining us now from Washington to weigh in, media reporter for the Washington Examiner, Eddie Scarry. Eddie, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's first talk about what's happening with the nation's bridges and roads. This Newark Bridge has caused a traffic nightmare in the New York City area. We had the train derailment out west last week. How much do you think Democrats are going to get on board for infrastructure? Normally, they like to spend money on infrastructure projects.
Right, and that's something we're going to have to see how that plays out politically, simply because you have Republicans, if you remember back during the Obama years, the early Obama years, they wanted to pass the stimulus, which had a lot of infrastructure elements to it. And Republicans looking through, and conservative groups looking through the bill, scrutinizing it, they claimed there was a lot of waste in it. They said that the money was not being spent properly. So that's going to have to be something that the president thinks about if he wants something this massive to go through. And the spending is pretty remarkable. So he's going to have to do some work with Republicans, particularly on that issue.
Hey, Eddie, Ryan Knutson here. Would it have been more effective if Trump had taken this on first? I mean, if this was his first move out of the gate after the election, when people weren't really sure what he was going to do politically, is it going to be more difficult for him to try to do this now that he's sort of built up a lot more enemies in Washington?
I think you're right, and you would think that this should be a less controversial issue, given that everybody likes the idea of their bridges and their roads being repaired in their town. Everyone knows what a pothole feels like, one that's been there for years. So this could have been a more politically wise move to take on. I know that what he campaigned on was the sense of urgency when it came to Obamacare, immigration. He did talk a lot about infrastructure, and he's been talking about that, going back decades when back towards the 80s. So it could have been an easier move to make. At the same time, he did make certain promises that were more urgent at the time, or that he maybe saw as more urgent. So it's still hard to see. I know the Democrats maybe don't see themselves as having much of an incentive to work with him, but maybe he can flex his muscles on this and get something done.
Well, we should say that Congresswoman Debbie Dingell has come out in public and said she is willing to work with the president. So I do want to add that in. Kat Timpf's got a question for you.
Yeah, I know you mentioned earlier, Eddie, about how Republicans in the past have been concerned about spending when it comes to bills like this. Do you see those concerns now, or maybe at the very least, do we hear anyone talking about how maybe we might pay for this?
Well, even when it came to the tax bill that was just passed, we had certain holdouts saying that we don't see the math here. We don't see how this is going to work out. We've been elected to Congress going back, for several terms in some cases, where they were deficit hawks. They were looking at the spending. They were very anti-spending on the Obama years, and they couldn't come, or they at least didn't want to be perceived as completely flip-flopping on that now that they had a Republican in power. So yeah, I think that there is a strong likelihood you'll see enough Republicans that this is not just going to squeeze through quickly. This is something they're going to have to work on and really deal on, probably on an individual basis with certain members.
Certainly, and that's where the negotiating is going to come back in, and that's all going to start next month. The president visited a group of first responders at a fire station in Florida yesterday. He was talking a lot about his first year in office, and it was interesting what he said. He said that the country is a, quote, big, beautiful ship that his administration is turning around. Listen to what he said.
We have more legislation passed, including the record was Harry Truman. That's a long time ago, and we broke that record. So we have a lot done. In addition, we have a lot of executive orders. The stock market hit a new high 84 times since we won the election on November 8th of last year. So that's something we can all be proud of, and that makes you all look very smart. And your family say, boy, are you a great investor, right?
Eddie, you're a media reporter. What is your take on how the president was treated by the press corps in 2017?
I mean, he likes to say a lot that the overwhelming coverage by the national press has been negative. I mean, that's true. Anybody who watches the news knows that that's true. When it comes to the fact that his achievements and legislatively, obviously that's overshadowed a lot by Russia, the Russia deal, and I think that he's been upset, and there are some understandable frustrations why his repealing certain Obama regulations that were done by executive order. He's got through this massive tax bill. That's been obviously his first major legislative accomplishment. I think he has reason to say that these are issues that are not covered. I'm doing what I said I would be elected to do, and it's 1 year down and he's still standing. There were some people who had doubts about that. So we're going forward. He's got another 3 years, and we'll see what he can do in that time.
Well, I want to take this to Hitha, because if you look in particular how retail stocks have been doing earlier this year, strong consumer spending, consumer sentiment.
Exactly.
I mean, but besides the Wall Street gains, he's rolled back regulations. For every one regulation, he killed 22. I mean, the Supreme Court justice nomination. I mean, they've had all these wins. They don't seem to be getting credit for that, but the American consumer seems to be spending on those.
Well, and that was a question that I was gonna ask. I mean, how is it that we here on business networks are talking about these trillion-dollar gains for the market? And, you know, we're looking at an almost 16% increase overall in the last year. How come no one's talking about that? I mean, is it one thing that is it only specific for us business networks, or is this just a story that just gets lost in the shuffle?
Well, I know, again, that the Russia controversy has consumed a lot of time, particularly when it comes to the national media, but there are polls that show that the public, overall, that is the last issue that they care about. The AP came out with a poll some time ago, within the last month, that said that there was about 30% of the public that was their main issue. Others, Republicans, they cared about immigration. Democrats cared about health care. And these are things he's working on, and they consume, I would guess, most of his day. But the Russia deal is of most interest to the national media in New York and Washington.
Eddie, I think you're psychic, because I've got the poll right in front of me. And I want to tell our viewers some of the specifics. I think it was very fascinating. This poll ranks the highest priorities for the American public for 2018. Guess what was number one? It was health care, overwhelmingly, 48%. That was Democrats, Republicans. Right behind it was taxes, immigration, the environment, education, and then finally the economy. But also I have to add on this poll, Eddie, that a lot of Americans say that the president has not done anything to unite the country. In fact, only 9% of Americans say that he has brought the country together.
Right, and I think that just talking about media coverage, I think we should always wonder what role the media plays in that, the national media, that is. We have a very divided media. I don't know so much. It reflects kind of, because that's where the country gets its news. That's a lot of their perspective is shaped that way. But when we have very polarized media, you might see that effect. So I would think that's to be expected in some ways.
It seems to me that one of the reasons that Trump is not happy with the coverage is because he creates controversies that then the media reports on and creates these conflicts. I mean, you know, we had that sound up earlier, and he mentioned how he's signed more legislation than any other president, which is actually not the case. And so reporters end up focusing on the fact that he made a misstatement rather than focusing on the issues that
right, but I don't know that that's actually a controversy he created. It might just be he's talking out the cuff. I mean, I would actually, even if you go back to the controversy with the NFL and the things he was talking about, the kneeling for the flag, that was kind of an aside that he gave at a rally. It wasn't the main piece of his speech that he was giving at the rally, but you had the national media clamoring onto this, and they talk about it for days and days and days. And so I don't know that the controversy was his that he made so much as it was the media's.
I think everyone knows you need to be a little more careful when you're president, though, about what you say. That's the thing about being president.
Maybe that's his New Year's resolution.
Well, this is what change looks like as well, yeah.
Think before you tweet. They've been entertaining, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie's Scarry. Eddie, thank you very much. Thanks for getting up early with us this morning.
Of course.
All right, well, coming up, Golden Apple, we're calling it that. Tim Cook gets a huge pay boost, but that's not all. Why Apple CEO is being ordered to fly private. And are you rushing to pay your property taxes before the big tax changes next year? It may already be too late. Some overnight developments and the impact on you that you need to hear about. That's coming up.
Knows an ant can't move a rubber tree plant, but he's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. He's got high apple pie in the...
Good morning, Cheryl. Terrorists targeted a Shiite Muslim cultural center, killing at least 35 people, wounding more than 50 others. Afghan officials say 3 bombs were used in the attack, as well as one suicide bomber who blew himself up inside the center. The ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan claiming responsibility for the bombing. The group has carried out violent attacks on Shiites in recent months in the capital city of Kabul. Well, the power back on at California's Disneyland after a massive outage shut down power for at least a dozen rides and a large part of the park yesterday. The outage was actually caused by a malfunction with one of the park's transformers knocking out the power for several hours, and that left visitors angry and asking for their money back. Of course, this is a trip they planned for ages. However, Disney says it will not be issuing any refunds. All right, we've got raises for Apple CEO Tim Cook and some other Apple executives. Cook receiving the biggest spike. His pay, total pay for fiscal 2017, jumping 47% to $12.8 million because Apple exceeded both annual sales and profit goals. Here's another interesting detail. Apple also disclosing that their board requires that Tim Cook fly a private jet for all of his travel because of security reasons. And unfortunately, the early bird doesn't always get the worm. The IRS is out with a last-minute notice that could hurt filers trying to get a jump on next year's tax bill. The IRS says not all prepayments of 2018 property taxes this year may be tax deductible because not all of them have been calculated yet. The new tax law for 2018 caps the amount on the deduction for state and local income, sales, and property taxes at $10,000. So you should check with your accountant in these final few days of 2017. Cheryl?
Lauren, this is something else. I mean, the IRS puts this out on their website last night. They knew, they saw this cat. They knew that people were going and running to try and there were lines up in New York State. People, Governor Cuomo said, and he was encouraging people to do this.
Right.
Now the IRS says there are conditions. You have to have an actual assessment of your property in 2017. From how we're reading this on the IRS website.
Aren't there always conditions like that? Isn't there always a fine print when it comes to government bureaucry?
And at the 11th hour, too.
Right at the last minute. Right at the last minute.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this hard. They shouldn't have done that. I mean, but they just want to make it harder for people.
Well, I mean, more and more that I go through the tax bill and the details I see, the whole point was to get rid of people making deductions, whether it was small businesses or individuals, because that is where people maybe don't pay what they actually owe. And I'm not talking about the wealthy, I'm talking about all Americans. So that's a general assessment. But what do you make of this property tax?
Well, I've just never been so happy to be a renter.
Samesies, yes.
Great. Hitha,
Well, I'm a homeowner, so reading all of this information is a little freaking me out a little bit. But I think, again, to your point, like, I don't understand why they're putting out this information at the last minute when you're going to have this rush for people to go over and try to pay all this, taxes that may or may not count. I think that is the issue. But we were talking in the break. I mean, will this count or will this?
I don't know that this is over.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my question
maybe
here.
fight that.
I think that there's going to be a lot of questions about it. And I think from some of the experts I've talked to, tax experts, they say that there are some murky pieces of language in the tax bill, especially when it comes to the individual
Well, I think the
filing.
accountants are also confused, too. I mean, we called our accountant. I mean, maybe I should get a new accountant, but I mean, they had no clue. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's nice.
If your accountant hasn't had a heart attack by now.
Right.
I wonder if people's preparers are even returning their phone calls right now.
Yeah, a lot of
it's been pretty crazy.
Our tax reporters at the Wall Street Journal, their inboxes are flooded with questions right now.
Yeah, as we are here, we're going to be talking about it a lot more today and later on in the show as well. We've also got this coming up. Former Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore is still not backing down after his loss. The details as he files a lawsuit just hours before his opponent is supposed to be officially named the winner, and that's still on track. And retail gets robot rocked. How tech will continue to impact that sector. That's coming up in 2018. The future is now. Tech innovations are everywhere, from topping Christmas lists to delivering packages. Joining us this morning is Robo Global CIO and President William Studebaker. William, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, tech has been hot for 2017 for investors. Where do you think technology is heading in the new year?
I think it's more of the same. I mean, we live in a really exciting time to be investors and to be consumers. And just the rate of change right now is truly exponential. Investors and a lot of consumers have the ability to kind of think about things linearly, but I think we need to be thinking about things in much more exponential fashion. The rate of change is definitely accelerating right now, and the way we're consuming technologies and using them is going to continue to evolve. It's going to be fun to see how this plays out in the years ahead.
What do you think the impact on jobs is going to be from all this automation? Are the concerns that many people have about this, robots coming to take everyone's jobs? What do you make of those?
Well, I think a lot of those comments are just fears. I mean, I think we've been automating for hundreds of years, and along with the automation and the progress we've had more prosperity, more wealth creation. I mean, think back in the early 1900s, 60% of our workforce was in ag. Now it's 2%. We're producing more with less. I think we're going to continue to evolve. A lot of the job classifications that exist today did not exist 20, 30 years ago, right? Back in 1910, when the blacksmith was getting disintermediated by mass production, the Model T, he probably didn't have any foresight in understanding concepts around AI and data scientists and web engineers and app developers, et cetera, right? So I think our economy is going to evolve, and along with that, new classifications of jobs are going to evolve as well. So I think it's a little bit unfounded to kind of fear the robots like we had been.
I want to bring Hitha into this because 2018, Hitha, may be the year that we pull the plug on a number of retail giants, whether it's Toys R Us, whether it's Sears. You know, you've got AI now, which is happening in fast food chains, but it's also happening in now department stores, the instant checkout without having that person there. I mean, that's a job story, but that's also a resale story.
Sure. I mean, we have a lot of, we see a lot of that automation happening, you know, what he was saying. And I think what we are going to see as we get into the next couple of years is this automation of jobs. But also, I think a lot of the retailers are going that way. The consumer's spending differently. So that is why, I mean, we want things very quickly. You know, according to PayPal, 80% of people bought their gifts online via the
I did all of mine. And the only way that I eat, the only way I ever eat is Postmates and Seamless. I have not a grocery in my entire house.
And between Amazon and having all of those gifts, you know, just being delivered to your homes or to other people's homes, of course, that's a version of automation. But I do have a question. In terms of if people do want to invest in these robo stocks, you know, we're talking about ETFs. How do people, I mean, as the basic investor that's interested in this, how do they, and they don't want to go ahead and they don't know the difference between a GPU and a CPU, but they are interested in this, you know, how would they go about getting into it? I mean, is the ETF the way to go, or should they just start doing the research immediately?
Well, we think that's the best approach right now. I mean, we're so early in the growth curve right now of robotics, AI, that to pick the obvious winners and losers is really difficult. So we created an index to invest across the entire value chain of robotics, AI, and automation. Recognize that there's not only just the technologies of what makes the robot work, right? It's the computing, the AI, the processing, the sensing, the actuation, the integration, but then also all the applications and the use cases, everything, where's it being deployed? It's being deployed into industrial manufacturing, into logistics, warehouse automation, to healthcare, to ag, food, et cetera. So there's actually a very broad cast of sectors that you can invest in, and they're going to evolve at different rates. And I think the important thing is to recognize where the new source of growth is coming from. I mean, most investors have a lot of interest in the FANG companies, and although, you know, we don't really define them as sort of robotic AI companies because they're really just using these technologies to enable their business. They're not profiting from selling these technologies. Right. So that's the big difference here.
That's the bigger story, though. I think that's a perfect point. Whether it's looking at the technology that IBM is using, that Bitcoin is using the same technology that IBM is using, but who's going to come out the winner? That was a debate we had yesterday, William. So it's all about how these companies can integrate all of it in one piece. And the FANG stocks have been on fire. Tech was up yesterday again. William Studebaker, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll never understand how we have so many people still doing the fight for 15 thing, when it's very clear that automated services are taking over fast food, retail, all of those minimum wage jobs.
The labor force in general is changing, and it's going towards technology. You're absolutely right.
Towards facial recognition.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is the future.
Oh, yeah. iPhone 10, anybody?
Oh, my gosh.
No? It works. That's fine. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Vanity Fair under fire from liberals after poking fun, how dare they, at Hillary Clinton. The magazine's response to the outrage just ahead. And Israel says thank you to President Donald Trump, how the country will express its gratitude to our commander-in-chief after he recognizes Jerusalem as its capital.
Hold on to your innocence. Stand your ground when everybody's giving in. This one's for the good.
morning. I'm Cheryl Casone, and I'm in from Maria Bartiromo today. And it's Thursday, December 28th. Your top stories at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The question on everyone's mind, will the rally roll into 2018? This morning, we've got futures showing a positive gain to your market, second to the last trading day of 2017, down 25% for the year, by the way, guys. Over in Europe, taking a look at those markets right now, as you can see, the FTSE barely in the green, the other indexes in the red. Then in Asia, overnight markets closed mostly higher. The Kospi up over 1%. The rest of the markets there, though, as you can see, mixed bag. Well, still not conceding. Roy Moore now taking his fight over his loss in the Alabama Senate race to court. He explained why he won't give up earlier this month.
This particular race was watched not only by the people of this state, but by the entire nation and many around the world. Why? Because I believe the heart and soul of our country is at stake.
Details from the late-night court filing, including Moore's new claim of, quote, systematic voter fraud. I'm going to say that 3 times fast. Systematic voter fraud, that's what he's saying. Plus, apparently, it is comedy that comes before the fall. Vanity Fair under fire from liberals after poking fun at Hillary Clinton. The magazine's response to the outrage over its New Year's resolution suggestions for the former presidential candidate. And Israel hops on the Trump train, the country's new honor for the president and his steadfast support. Over a dozen girls' makeup products test positive for asbestos. The shocking new recall from Claire's Boutiques. We've got that story. And a slam dunk for Nike. NBA fans go wild over the league's new jerseys. How the swoosh found inspiration from team cities. And Hollywood's unstoppable force, Disney, dominates the box office again, taking the top spot for 2017 thanks to hits like The Last Jedi and Beauty and the Beast, the massive haul that the company brought in for the year.
Darkness rises.
Well, our top story right now, Roy Moore, he filed a lawsuit to block Alabama from officially recognizing Democrat Doug Jones as the winner of the U.S. Senate race, alleging voter fraud. Late last night, Moore's campaign filed a complaint about 14 hours ahead of today's state canvassing board meeting that would certify Jones's victory. Here's a look back to what Roy Moore said after the election results.
In this race, we have not received the final count to include military and provisional ballots. This has been a very close race, and we are awaiting certification by the Secretary of State.
Kat, Roy Moore is not giving up. This is, I would think, bad for the party.
Acting like a snowflake. Right? He needs to get on that horse and ride away into the sunset, because this is absolutely ridiculous at this point. I watched that whole video, and it's bananas. He talks about the collapse of society. He babbles about sodomy for a while. What? It's not what you do after you lose an election. After you lose an election, you admit that you lost, and it doesn't look good for the party. You're absolutely right. It's a laughingstock. It's a joke. You have to laugh so you don't cry. He needs to go away like a long time ago.
You know, it's interesting, Ryan, because, you know, President Trump did endorse Roy Moore.
It's not really great for democracy for these kinds of arguments about the voting process and the integrity of the voting, and to talk about fraud and to challenge the election, because I mean, a lot of the studies show that there's not a lot of voter fraud that takes place out there. So to raise this notion all the time, it's going to make people not really believe in the democratic process.
It's not great for the party either. I mean, we're looking at the more you have a candidate sit there and come out like that, it bifurcates the party even more, and it perpetuates this idea that, you know, there's no sort of legs to stand on in the GOP.
He's a grown man, by the way.
He's a grown man, exactly.
The Alabama Secretary of State, John Merrill, did tell the AP that they've seen no indication of fraud, that Jones won by 20,000 votes, and they plan to carry on today as is and certify Jones as the next senator.
Of course they will. Of course they will. He's having a temper tantrum by himself, and all he's doing is humiliating himself. You see a toddler in a restaurant screaming and crying, you're like, ooh, that's embarrassing. It's exactly what's happening here.
And the longer that this goes on, and the more he stays in the headlines, the more it's just going to remind people that, you know, across the country, that Roy Moore is connected to the party, like, you know, Trump supported him.
Absolutely,
like
right.
Which is not great.
Yeah. I want to switch gears to another story I think is fascinating this morning, and this is it's a bit of a surprise. Vanity Fair is under fire from liberals, actually. They posted a video called 6 New Year's Resolutions for Hillary Clinton. I want you guys to watch this.
Take up a new hobby in the new year. Volunteer work, knitting, improv comedy, literally anything that'll keep you from running again.
Okay, so a spokeswoman for Vanity Fair responded to all of this and said, look, it was an attempt at humor. We regret that it missed the mark. Kat, your reaction? I mean, look, it was meant to be funny, and liberals are angry at Vanity Fair, which frankly can be pretty liberal itself.
Well, it wasn't like super funny, especially considering how easy it is to make fun of Hillary Clinton. But that's not why people were upset. People were upset because it was making fun of Hillary Clinton, which you should be able to make fun of whatever you want, including Hillary Clinton, especially because she does make it so easy. The only thing that offends me is that they said they regret it and that they're sorry.
Here are two of my issues with this video. First of all, it's not funny. Okay,
Right.
they should have just like had a comedy writer go in there and just write it. First of all, and they're not actors or paid actors; they're editors, and sometimes you just don't vibe funny. But also, I think it's a feminist slant too. I think people are very angry. We're coming off the heels, or I guess we're in the midst of this hashtag Me Too. People really want to talk about women's rights and like, what are they doing? Sitting there telling Hillary Clinton, who is a Secretary of State. I mean, like her or hate her. You know, I'm not necessarily a fan of her either, but she was a member of this government that we have, and to tell her what to do in this like really unfunny video.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to not make fun of her though. It can be for me personally. But I agree.
Why do you say that?
It's just she just makes it so easy when she comes out and says things and does things, and she tries really, really hard to be cool. She wants to be like the cool grandma. She's not. If she's boring, that's okay. Just like be a boring smart lady. Just go with that.
The difference between you and the people in the video is that you're actually funny.
No, I think
you are funny.
You are.
She just topped the list of most admired women in 2017, I think.
Well, look, I mean,
yes,
she's still beloved by a lot of people in America, even though she is very poor.
And that's where the outrage comes from on the left, because there's still, it's now, we're over a year later since the election, and they're still angry about the results of the election.
It's not like they know her personally. Why are they getting so upset? They knew Hillary personally. I get why they'd be this upset, but most of them, I'm betting, have never even met her.
I actually have to wonder, too, if the more that Hillary stays in the spotlight, how bad is that for the party, for the Democratic Party? Because they should have, a year ago, started to look for somebody new.
Yeah, there clearly is across the country a sentiment of trying to, shake away a lot of the establishment and start fresh in the political system in general.
Yeah, well, this is a pickup on a story we did yesterday, guys. The Office actress, I don't know if you saw this, Jenna Fischer, got a lot of backlash over, frankly, a misinformed wrong tweet on the Republicans' tax bill. She deleted it from Monday, but here's what she wrote. She's actually coming back on the story. She says, I can't stop thinking about how school teachers can no longer deduct the cost of their classroom supplies on their taxes, something they shouldn't have to pay for with their own money in the first place. I mean, imagine if nurses had to go buy their own syringes, hashtag ugh. Well, people on Twitter jumped on her because that $250 school supply deduction is in the bill. The new piece of this today, guys, is that she's responded now to all of this. She says, quote, I've deleted the tweet and would like to issue an apology. Please read and retweet to help me spread the word thanks. That's the thing with these celebrities, Kat. They're emotional, they've got an opinion about something, but if you don't have the facts, you can damage your own brand by saying something that was misinformed.
If you really can't stop thinking about something and it's keeping you up at night, I would advise Googling it to make sure it's actually really happening. It can be really good emotionally.
You need research before you actually
make sure that it's not an imaginary problem, because those will get you.
At the very least, maybe even read a newspaper or watch some news.
Whoa.
Jenna Fischer reading the Wall Street Journal? I don't know.
I got to applaud her for issuing an apology and for correcting herself, though. There are a lot of way more prominent people with a lot more power that don't do that and also are, don't pay that close of attention to the facts.
Yeah, well, social media can be really fun, and it can be a curse, especially if you're wrong.
Yeah, social media is very dangerous. There should be like a 1-hour delay between every tweet where people can have a chance to actually think about what they're saying.
Or a button that says, are you sure you really want to tweet this?
Yeah. Well, coming up, we've got a lot more to talk about on the show. Cosmetics warnings for young women. This is pretty frightening. Claire's has yanked several different makeup products from their stores after they tested positive for asbestos. The details coming up on that. And the box office becoming the house of the mouse this year. We're breaking down the big pictures that helped Disney capture the year at the movies. Welcome back. Futures pointing right now to a positive open. Second to last trading day of 2017. Strap in because the Bitcoin roller coaster is still going this morning, folks. The cryptocurrency plunging 10% overnight after South Korea announced plans to regulate virtual coin trading. Bitcoin shed $1,000 on this news, falling below the $14,000 mark. However, Bitcoin still up about 1,400% for the year, 1,400%. Meanwhile, Snapchat looking for life beyond the app. According to a new report from Cheddar, parent company Snap is working on a new feature called Stories Everywhere. It would allow users to post pictures and clips on the web and through other apps. Snap shares in the pre-market, as you can see, down about 0.25%. Well, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo pardoning nearly 20 immigrants ahead of the new year. Lauren Simonetti's got that story. Lauren.
Hey, Cheryl. Governor Cuomo has pardoned 61 people, including 18 immigrants, saying the move is based on their rehabilitation efforts. The Democratic governor of New York continuing to criticize President Trump's hardline immigration policies in the process. In a statement, he says this: while the federal government continues to target immigrants and threatens to tear families apart with deportation, these actions take a critical step toward a more just, more fair, and more compassionate New York. While the Trump name could be showing up in Israel, the country's transportation minister wants to name a planned train station at the Western Wall after President Donald Trump. Trump visited the wall last May, the first sitting U.S. president to go to the Jewish holy site, and he recently announced that the U.S. will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. A cancer risk that could be lurking in your kids' makeup. Claire's is now pulling 17 makeup products from store shelves nationwide after testing positive for asbestos, a toxic substance that has been linked to cancer. Disturbing discovery was made after a Rhode Island mom sent her 6-year-old's makeup to an independent lab for testing. The woman's company then purchased different kits in 9 different states, all testing positive. Claire's now conducting its own investigation. And for the second year in a row, Disney is the box office champ. Blockbuster films like Star Wars: The Last Jedi and Beauty and the Beast helping the studio rake in $2.27 billion this year. Warner Brothers finishing in second place with $2.2 billion. The Beauty and the Beast reboot remains Disney's top-grossing film at $504 million. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which is still in theaters, it has made $423 million so far. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, $390 million. Thor Ragnarok with $309 million. Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales, $173 million. So there you have it. Disney is up nearly 4% in 2017. The only one of those that I saw was Beauty and the Beast. We watch it every day at my house.
Of course, it's called being a mom. Wait till the Frozen Broadway show starts, Lauren.
I'm actually really excited for that. You want to go? Let's go.
Yep, I do want to go. We'll talk after the show. That's interesting about Disney, that she's pointing out the fact that they've made so. I mean, you cannot stop the power that is Disney. They just, of course, cut the deal with our parent company, 21st Century Fox, to buy assets, and Bob Iger is sticking around.
I mean, they are already a behemoth, and if this 21st Century Fox deal gets approved, they are going to be the biggest monster out there. I mean, it's not going to be a mouse anymore. It's going to be a I don't know.
A giant mouse.
Yeah.
A monster mouse.
I mean, no, I do want to warn all of my friends with small children, get ready for the Frozen Broadway musical, because your life is going to be, again, hearing that song over and over, and they're working on a sequel. I mean, this is Disney, though. This is what they do, whether it's Broadway shows or it's the theme parks or it's the Star Wars trilogy. I mean, it's incredible.
Even, I mean, on the media side, a revamp of ESPN. I mean, this was certainly a property that was losing money for a little bit. They had a massive cut, and now they're, revamping so they can eventually be more profitable. I mean, I think actually, in terms of the media side, that was one of the most profitable parts of Disney. So they're really trying to kind of restructure that so it can continue this making Disney the juggernaut that it is.
And they're going to have a streaming service then coming out in 2019 that's going to compete with Netflix, and they also now are going to be the majority owner of Hulu, so that is going to push the country more into the online streaming.
Well, that's the way to go, really. I don't know. That's pretty much how I watch most.
When's the last time you actually went to a movie theater, Kat Timpf?
I really don't like going to the movies. They're really long and you can't talk and you can't be on your phone. I would rather have a more social activity in my life than watch a movie, but some people really dig it. So,
but you stream things, right?
I stream things at home, but then, you know, I can pause them. I can have my cat there. I can have my phone there. I can have, like, food other than popcorn and pretzels. I can drink wine out of my coffee mug. It's a more pleasant experience.
I do wonder if they're going to start
I love the visual.
releasing movies over streaming once Disney has their online streaming platform, because they're going to be one of the biggest movie producers in the world, obviously, and so they've got their own streaming platform. Maybe you can start paying $10 or $15 and then, you know, watch it at home with wine and everything.
I'd rather, instead of going to the theater, let me watch The Last Jedi in my apartment. That's what I would prefer.
In my apartment, I always
100%.
prefer anything at my own apartment.
All right, well, we've got a lot more coming up. We're talking sports in the next block. The NBA putting on a full-court press to honor their hometowns. We've got to look at the league's new City Edition uniforms. It's next.
When I grow up, I want to be famous, I want to be a star, I want to be in movies. When I grow up, I want to see the world, drive nice cars, I want to have movies. When I grow up, be on TV, people know me, be on magazines. When I grow up, fresh and clean, #1 chick when I step up.
Well, something happened last night in the NBA that we hadn't seen in 21 years. Jared Max is here with that story. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Cheryl. It was turn back the clock night in the NBA. First time since 1996. One player dished out 25 assists in one game. Hey, 'tis the season of giving, right? And the New Orleans Pelicans' Rajon Rondo played Santa Claus. He delivered 25 assists. 25 gift baskets, if you will. And he only played 30 of the game's 48 minutes. Rondo becomes the oldest player in NBA history with 25 assists in a game. He's not even 32 yet, and the 7th player overall to reach this number, first since Jason Kidd in 96. Pelicans 86, the Nets. It's not a Gatorade bath, it's like a Gatorade splash. LeBron James had scored more points than Vince Carter in head-to-head matchups. 20 games in a row dating all the way back to 2007. But it was turn back the clock night of the NBA. And while LeBron James recorded a triple-double against the Sacramento Kings, 16 points, 10 boards, 13 assists, first time in a game since December of 07, LeBron outscored by Vince Carter, who's now 40. Vince Saturday turned back the clock, season-high 24 points. Kings beat the Cavs 109-95. Have you seen these new NBA jerseys revealed by Nike? Check this out. The City Edition uniforms meant to pay tribute to city history and team culture. Take a look at some of these jerseys. The Lakers uniform pays tribute to Kobe Bryant. His number 24 is on the waistband. Snakeskin-like print honors his nickname. There's the NOLA, the New Orleans Pelicans. They throw it back with Mardi Gras style. The Land, yeah, that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James, they sought his opinion on this for the design. The Miami Heat, they go Crockett and Tubbs, Miami Vice, all over again. The Warriors, who play in Oakland, they'll move to San Francisco in 2019. They honor the Bay. I love the 76ers one, too, the Declaration of Independence that we saw. Speaking of new uniforms, beginning of January, if you want to buy a jersey for LiAngelo or LaMelo Ball, their Lithuanian team jerseys will be up for sale in the United States. Tonight on FS1, Washington State plays Michigan State in the Holiday Bowl. Yesterday, while Michigan State's coach Mark D'Antonio was talking to the media, Washington State's Mike Leach got caught in a trance. Mike Leach caught on camera yesterday. How many times must a coach blow on his coffee before it's cool enough to sip? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the cup. The answer is blowing in the cup. He just keeps going.
Doesn't he realize he's on camera?
He doesn't, and look, he doesn't, I don't even think he sipped it. Then he covers it up.
Yeah, why would you go through all of that and embarrass yourself like that just to cover it up and let all the steam stay in the cup?
Have you ever had a camera on you, you don't realize it's on you, and then you see the video and you say, why am I sitting there with my finger next to my hair biting?
Yeah.
If there were cameras on us all the time, we'd probably look like idiots. I know I've done it many times. What am I doing?
He knew. I want to ask you about the Olympics, obviously. The 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo. There's some interesting technology that they're talking about using. Japan Times is reporting that they want to use facial recognition to manage athletes, the journalists, you know, everybody that's coming in, 40,000 spectators that they're estimating. So facial technology.
Smart.
I think that's interesting.
Think about the Super Bowl, the last one, where the guy from Mexico wound up stealing Tom Brady's jersey. You think this highly secure set, how did this take place? And it takes place because there are so many faces who people aren't used to seeing from the security standpoint, that something like that can happen. I think this is a good move.
I think it's scary.
Yeah.
You do? I think it's scary. I don't want everything to know my exact face and know everything I do and everything this face does and where it goes and where it doesn't go. I just don't care for that.
I mean, talk about cameras being on you all the time and recording the dumb things that you're doing. And but also, like, what happens when there's some sort of glitch with the facial recognition and you know, suddenly get identified as being someone that you're not, or maybe someone that is doing
I wasn't
something
paranoid
terrible?
about that yet, but now I'm going to be. Thank you.
The technology, I think, is incredible, though. We've seen it with the
well,
Apple.
you can't really change your face, so there's nothing you can. This is going to follow you around wherever you go. China is already using facial recognition technology very widespread for policing tactics. There's a billboard, I think, in one of the streets there that they will show the faces of people that have been jaywalking there over time to try to discourage jaywalking.
They're street shaming.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly.
That wouldn't
It's
bother me.
already here. I mean, does anybody on the phone? I don't like to. I won't use the fingerprint on my phone. I have the passcode, so you got to put in. But a lot of people choose to put their fingerprint.
I like the idea for security.
When we put in our badge, we put in for our Super Bowl credentials as we're doing. They want to know your date of birth, your social security number. There's a lot of information that's still out there.
Jared Max still using the passcode. Thank you, Jared.
You don't use the passcode, you use the fingerprint?
Yeah,
I use the fingerprint, too.
I'm using facial recognition now. It's great.
Scary.
Look at your phone. Open.
I'm
Done.
afraid somebody types in the name on Google and every photo you've ever been in is there.
Probably
Jared.
happening.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. You, of course, can catch all of Jared's sports reports every day. Fox News headlines 24/7, also on Sirius XM 115. Still ahead, 75 years of history and pride. Up next, the family business that is carrying on the tradition of the Moscow Mule and the iconic Copper Cup. That's next. Mornings with Maria.